In this crooked game of power politics here in America, the Negro, namely the race problem, integration, civil rights issue, are all nothing but tools used by the whites who call themselves liberals against another group of whites who call themselves conservatives, either to get into power or to retain power. Among whites here in America, the political teams are no longer divided into Democrats and Republicans. The whites who are now struggling for control of the American political throne are divided into liberal and conservative camps. The white liberals from both parties cross party lines to work together toward the same goal, and white conservatives from both parties do likewise. The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. The liberal is more deceitful, more hypocritical than the conservative. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. And by winning the friendship and support of the Negro, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon in this political football game that is constantly raging between the white liberals and the white conservatives. The American Negro is nothing but a political football, and the white liberals control this ball through tricks or tokenism, false promises of integration and civil rights. In this game of deceiving and using the American Negro, the white liberals have complete cooperation of the Negro civil rights leader, who sell our people out for a few crumbs of token recognition, token gains, token progress. In the New York Tribune, in an editorial dated February the 5th, 1960, they pointed out that out of 11 million qualified Negro voters, only 2,700,000 actually take time to vote. These are parrots that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. Being friendly and being a friend, I think, are two different things. I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that
I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
Okay, so that was our brother, El Hajj Malik Shabazz, Rahimahullah, Rahmatullah Alayh, just basically breaking down what I've been saying all along, hence the reason why I got what I'm saying all along from him. So, Ibrahima Traore has put into decree that, homosexuality will be a criminal offense, which will be jailed, which will, has the potential of jail time for up to 5 years. Guess who's mad? Not only is the natural liberal mad, but also the Vallejo liberal is mad as well. And, this just goes into the face of, these people who think that they're really allies when they really aren't. When you look at, unfortunately, the plight of our beautiful brothers and sisters in Palestine, you see the fact that their support is conditional. Their support is as long as their agenda is fulfilled, that's all that matters. Ironically, unfortunately, a lot of them have gotten rich from this unfortunate catastrophe that we are living through right now. You will see that in these things, when it comes to conflicts in the world, it's always selective with them. The energy for Ukraine is not the same energy they will have for Haiti or the Congo or Sudan. Deeply because, or Yemen as well. Deeply because we are a black and brown people. When you look at, the Palestinian people, right? Despite what the census will show you, because that's one thing that they like to do. They like to, when it benefits them. And that's another liberal thing. That in the census, they'll put North African and they'll put Arab, like Middle Eastern, under the white race. But the opposite is the case. So I say this to say that when you look at the left, when you look at the vicious left, the vicious leftists, the liberals, their goal is not to help us in the third world. Their goal is to have a different form of imperialism, the intellectual imperialism, meaning that the average leftist is a feminist. The average leftist is someone who advocates for LGBT and liberalism. And the reason why that is, I have a few theories. The first theory is they don't want us to realize our potential, our true potential. The third world to realize its potential. A place that is of geopolitical importance because you have Nigeria, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and let's just also include Chad in this space. These countries alone, if left alone, if given the chance to cultivate resources and having a just leader, they would, in essence, be great. Probably, I would say that they probably would be up in the area of UAE, or they may even surpass UAE in the terms of development and what have you. The same can be said about Sudan. The problem with Sudan is UAE is really the cause of a lot of the problems in Sudan. When you really think about it, that's the issue. That's the issue in itself with UAE. Now, in terms of the liberal is very much like the conservative, whereas I would say both their ideologies kind of align with communism. And the reason why I say that is because they'll say that, we value freedom of speech. They'll say we value freedom of expression. They'll say these things, But once freedom of speech, freedom of expression goes against their narrative or goes against what they believe in, then it's not free. Then it becomes a dictatorship. Then it becomes a totalitarian regime. Then it becomes, I guess you can say, in my opinion, the push towards a healthy society. Of course, they won't agree with that. But, I agree with what Ibrahima Traore has decided to put in place. Now, the thing is, and I tried not to go back and forth with these people. A lot of these people are fried. But what happened was there was a belligerent homosexual who wanted to go back and forth with me because I put, alhamdulillah, STD preventive measure is now in place and depopulation preventive measure is now in place. Because that's kind of the way I look at what they want to do. As much as they say that they like us and things like that, as much as they say they're for power to the people and therefore freedom and things like that, they're really not. They're really not about that. In fact, the reason why they're not about that is when you look at, for example, the black liberal or even the black conservative, there's only, like as Malcolm X said, there's only a few token ones that benefited from taking this role. The majority of them really didn't benefit nothing, I guess you can say the black feminist, she benefited from, septum ring, colored hair, I want to say high body counts most of the time, and antidepressants, right? So, that's what they benefited, and that's what they considered freedom. That's what they considered, I guess you can say, what is the word they use? I guess autonomy over their body, as they like to say, But, in Africa and in different parts of the world, we, strive for different things. When you look at, for example, in Mali, and I consider this a karamat from Allah. I consider this a karama from Allah. But one woman in Mali carried 9 kids at one time. Okay? All of the kids came out healthy too. Imagine how strong you have to be to do that. Okay? 9 kids at one time. Okay? When you listen to, for example, I think it was a Israeli speaking. I think they said something about Palestinians have big families. Palestinians have big families. They they reproduce. So that's a blessing from Allah. This is a blessing from Allah. So, when you look at the map of fertility, right? When you look at the map of fertility, you see that in the areas where it's most fertile, it's in Africa, Middle East, and as well as parts of Central Asia, where they're having the most fertility at. So, I say this because, especially in the Muslim perspective, we believe that, Allah is going to provide for you when you have the children, as long as your intentions are right and as long as the children are conceived in the right way, which is through marriage. It's easy for us to like have marriage in Africa, gift, witnesses, agreement, kalas. The marriage takes place. Some people like to go overboard with the I want to say the feast and all these other things. Yes, they like to do that. But I want to say that it's not a problem. The marriage, like having a marriage is not an issue with in Africa. We don't have that issue of marriage. Now, I think that's what it really boils down to, because the thing is this, okay? This is the thing. Not every African, and let's just say on a greater scale, not every African descendant person is going to want to like integrate and start a family with, the Anglo or the Celt. You know what I mean? Or the Germanic person. Not everyone is going to want to do that. So I think really when you look at the pushback from Ibrahima Traore's new decree, especially from the left, I think it's the fear of, a healthy society, which goes into the face of what they think a healthy society is. Because when you look at, for example, you have men wearing skirts now. You saw it in ATL. There were men wearing skirts now. You see that, for example, in America, they're having less kids and things like that. I think there was some kind of incentive that Donald Trump put, that he was like, oh, you know what? Since we're having less kids, I'm going to put some incentives for you to have kids, okay? I think that's what happened, as a matter of fact, with Donald Trump. So now that this is taking place, right? Now that these things are happening as we speak, right? They want to make sure everybody else feels the pain. Like, for example, with BRICS. BRICS provided an alternative to doing business, basically, on the global scale. What happens as a punishment for doing business on that scale? Tariffs. The thing is with the left and with the right, with the so-called communists and Marxist Leninists, and I'm going to end the video on this note, with the communists, Marxist Leninists, the left, the conservatives, and things of that, and those of that sort, they haven't read really anything about, for example, like Thomas Sankara, let's say Maurice Bishop, let's say Mao Zedong, let's say Fidel Castro, and what have you. Because the thing is about, these people, they had kids, bro. They have families, you know what I mean? Amilcar Cabral, he had a family, All these people have families, So this kind of thing about like having some kind of inclusiveness with people who obviously are not on the natural order is pretty crazy, and it's pretty wild. You know what I mean? You had this one Karen come out and say that, it was a Traore L. that he implemented these laws. And it's like, okay, how is it an L? Like, what makes it an L? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, where does the L come from that he's doing this? And it was just the same Karens that you see. The thing is that unfortunately, that a lot of people, be it a brown person or a black person, they unfortunately sometimes are too gullible to think that these people have good intentions for them. When you look at these people and they're not even having good intention for their own, okay? In Italy, they're not even, they're having a population crisis, okay? It's just, that's just it, okay? So this is why for me, I just, there's very few, sincere people. That's the problem. But with that being said, shout outs to Ibrahima Traore for his new decree. And it really doesn't make any sense to debate a liberal or a conservative. They think the same. They just have a different way that they go about their same thinking, if that makes any sense. And I'll leave one more thing. Our Sheikh, Malam Abdullahi Ibn Fudiyeh, Rahimahullah, he has a book about social behavior. And he said that in the prohibited things of social behavior which prevent a healthy society are, he said homosexuality, fornication and adultery, sodomy. He also mentioned masturbation as well. And I think he was saying this because he knows that the solution to all of these things is healthy marriages, Nobody said marriage is going to be easy, nobody said that. Nobody said it's going to be a walk in the park or a fairy tale. But, ultimately, it is the solution, And, with that being said, I think that's what Ibrahima Traore is looking at. Because I believe he banned corn in the country as well. But yeah, to the Anglo-conservative and to the Anglo-liberal, I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say. Because everything you have to say does not benefit me at all, and it does not move my neck of the woods forward. But with that being said, Fuller signing out. Njaram.